Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry for this little tech issue. I'll try to be nice and short. Talking about Santiago Abascal. So, yeah, my paper and my presentation is Iberosphere as transnational anti-leftism, sovereignism, and rebelliousness in the discourse of VOX. Over the last day and 1 day and a half, we have been talking about international populism, transnational populism, post-national populism. And I want to talk about a specific space, which I think is in the middle of this inter, trans, and post type of space, which is Iberosphere, which, by the way, and I want to say that since the beginning, is a space that has no clear definition and has no clear boundaries either, because it's not Ibero-America, it's not Latin America, it's Iberosphere. And as VOX itself defines it, refers to all those who are or were connected to the Iberian Peninsula, so Spain and Portugal. And as you can see from the image, has a sort of neo-colonial flavor as well, connecting all these territories that were connected to Spain and Portugal in the past. And this is a presentation that is connected to the, of course, the project of geographies of populism, in which we basically look at the spaces, concrete spaces, where the people in populism are located and how the people in populism also shape different spaces. So the idea here basically is to inquire about the relationship between this type of space, the Iberosphere, with the specific type of people that is present in the discourse of VOX. And my claim, basically my point is that this space in the discourse of VOX fits within the broader ideological and rhetorical traits and features of VOX, which are basically connected to a few ideas: the idea of anti-leftism, the idea of sovereignty and sovereignism, and the kind of bad manners, or I would say rebelliousness, borrowing from Pablo Stefanoni's concepts about the far-right rebelliousness type of discourse as well. So very quickly, basically the two main questions I'm working on are the idea of VOX and how VOX is articulating the space of Iberosphere and how this space is shaping a specific type of people. I'm going to look very quickly at how we can define VOX. So locating VOX between the different ideas, different definition of far-right, populism, sovereignism, and bad manners quite quickly. And then I'll move on to the spatiality, the different type of spaces that are present in the discourse of VOX, and specifically the idea of the Iberosphere, which I want to say is not among the main spaces that are present in the discourse of VOX, but still it's quite interesting because it to some extent bypasses the idea of the nation, which of course is the main space in VOX discourse, the idea of Spain, España. So quite quickly, there's a huge literature about VOX and how we shall deal with VOX, whether it is a populist radical right party, a nationalist, ultra-nationalist, far-right, or post-fascist party. I think there are some ideological and political features in VOX that are central, key, and some that are not central but still present as the populist logic. in others such as nativism, nationalism, a sort of authoritarian traits are central in VOX. And the idea of sovereignty as well. Maybe you can do like this if you don't see. The idea of sovereignty, a specific type of idea of sovereignty, a nativist vision of sovereignty is central, I think, in VOX and in VOX discourse. And if you go through its program and its discourse, you see that sovereignty is declining in different forms. Sovereignty as the idea of the unity of Spain, sovereignty in terms of food production or energy production as well. And that is combined with a neoliberal agenda, more marked in the past, and which has changed, slightly changed post-pandemic. And two other features, which are central as well, this idea of anti-leftism and this rebelliousness that characterizes its discourse and that aligns with Moffat's bad manners ideal of populist styles as well. Populism as such is not central, I would say, because the idea of the people is not as present in the discourse of VOX, while Spaniards, Spain are two key concepts, but still this dichotomous differentiation between, let's say, or down, up logic is still there. So a sort of antagonistic vision is there. So there's some populist logic there, but it's not central as such. If you look at, for instance, the Agenda España, the VOX program, and if you do a sort of quick word analysis, you see the topics and issues that are central in VOX discourse. The idea of Spain is, the most used, of course. Basically, in every other sentence, you find the idea of Spain, España, and the Spaniards. Freedom, sovereignty, as I mentioned before, and the nation, the España vaciada, the anti-Spain as well, so the rural Spain, and so on and so forth, with some interesting aspect also with such like the idea of getting back, recuperar, getting back control, which is something that is similar to other right-wing parties in Europe and elsewhere. But what about the spatialities, the spaces in VOX? So moving on to this second part. Well, the spatiality in VOX are quite interesting because we can find national, subnational, local spatiality, and of course, as in the case of the Iberosphere, supranational spatiality. In terms of spatialities in Spain, we can see that there are local, national, and ideological spatiality, referring to Spain, that are contested. The local spatiality, so the calles seguras, no más delincuencia, safe streets, safe neighborhoods, are a key spatial locus contested to what they see as a threat. So immigrants that are kind of bringing in violence to our streets. National spatiality, we've got another contested space, and we have a left-wing politician there called as traitor and coupist. So the left-wing politician Pedro Sanchez is, of course, the prime minister in Spain and is representative of left. He represents the target of VOX discourse as the national left, and the governor of Catalonia, another left-wing politician, is called as a coupist, a coup d'etat, who basically kind of wanted to accomplished a coup d'etat back in 2017. And these are national and regional specialities that are contested and are present in the discourse of VOX. And more ideologically, the Agenda 2030 is a ideological speciality here represented by different politicians, not only on the left spectrum, but also on the conservative or the more traditional right-wing parties. Is ideological speciality linked to, well, to the nation of Spain, but to the more, let's say, cosmopolitan vision of progressive politics, let's say, that is another type of space contested by VOX, which in turn proposes something else, a different type of agenda, not Agenda 2030, but Agenda Spain, Agenda España. And these speciality are contested, as I say, and there are different alternatives that VOX puts forward. The idea of, broadly speaking, the idea of the lively or alive Spain, La España Viva, compared to the kind of dead Spain, which is a metaphor that VOX has used quite a lot during the pandemic, but even before that. And different type of speciality, more connected to the rural, authentic Spain. Here you got Santiago Abascal in the countryside in Spain. So VOX is the party that defends the rural, the authentic Spain, and the party that defends the heteronormative Spain as well. So the traditional family. So the intimate space here as well is quite important. So another type of speciality that is contested and for which VOX proposes something that goes and aligns with this idea of anti-leftism, anti-progressive politics. Now, moving on to the idea of the Iberosphere. It's another type of space in the discourse of VOX. As I told you, is not the main space in the discourse of VOX, because the main space, I remember, is the national space. But it's interesting because the Iberosphere combines these two dimensions, is still very much linked and connected to the national and the idea of a transnational, which is, of course, the focus of this seminar, and the idea of sovereignty. So what I've been doing basically is, was to look at different sources, some press connected to VOX, La Gaceta de la Iberosphere, which is a sort of online magazine created a few years ago with the specific title, in its title, La Gaceta de la Iberosphere is like the journal of the Iberosphere, and some statements at the core of this idea of the Iberosphere, the Madrid Chart back in the autumn 2020, and the Declaration of Madrid, the Cumbre of Madrid in January 22, and some Twitter accounts from the leaders of VOX. So just to give you the definition that VOX uses to basically name, to talk about the Iberosphere. The Iberosphere would be a community of free and sovereign nations, and which has specific target or threats in mind. And this is basically the reason why they decided to kind of foster to first to name this sphere, and then to foster the alliances that go with the Iberosphere, the idea of the Iberospheres. The region is kidnapped by communist-inspired totalitarian regimes supported by drug traffickers, all of them under the umbrella of the Cuban regime, and initiatives such as the Forum of Sao Paulo and the Group of Puebla, which are the two left-leaning initiatives, and in the Latin American context, they are targeting basically. And just want to draw your attention also on the type of vocabulary they use is communist-inspired totalitarian regime. So it's not, neutral vocabulary. And that is the basis for the types of alliances that they wanted to foster, they are fostering. And the Madrid Declaration, which is the basically last statement of the Madrid meeting last January, is another example of how they try to foster the types of alliances, not only with representatives from the Iberosphere, from the Latin American, North American countries, because I wanted just to briefly remember that all that started with an encounter with the alt-rights, North American alt-rights, just before the presidential election in the USA, so back in October 2020. And that basically didn't lead to a solid alliance with North American right-wing forces. And after that, VOX focused on this diverse type of space, the Iberospheres, which also includes North American forces, right? A few slides then on the empirical material. So basically on Twitter, if we look at how VOX talks about the Iberospheres on Twitter, we see some of the topics that I've been talking about. So, well, the idea of freedom, as in the same definition, it's quite central. It's pretty surprising, kind of post-authoritarian forces that are pretending to defend freedom, but still freedom is there as one of the main idea. Spain and Madrid are two key concepts in the declaration and in the way they talk about the Iberosphere. And the idea of sovereignty as well, patriotism, anti-leftism as well, it's there. So the idea of the threat that the left represents in these countries, in this region. And a few tweets from VOX and La Gazzetta de la Iberosphere, where we can see basically same ideas on the international alliance among leaders and political forces, patriot political forces, in the defense of freedom against the narco-communism, the narco-communism in the Iberosphere. And there, the La Gazzetta kind of, basically complaining about the recent Chile's election, where the left wing won the election basically and approached towards the photo of Sao Paulo, and they really want that not to happen in Colombia and Brazil. So there's this idea of kind of stopping the threat of this left-wing wave spreading throughout the Latin America or the Iberosphere as well. Here we've got other type of vocabulary used along this line as well by Santiago Abascal. Just to give you the example of this anti-leftist sovereignism with this rebellious rhetoric, to the totalitarian push of the left and its violence here in the first tweet against those who dissent is something shared within the Iberosphere. So it's very important for the patriots to unite against those who are kind of imposing the ideology by means of force and are trying to get rid of the opposition. So it's kind of bad manners. We can see some types of bad manners here as well in terms of rhetoric as well. And of course, from the Peruvian association linked to linked to this, linked to VOX and to other right-wing forces, basically greeting and celebrating the association with VOX and these other forces to kind of stop or to resist against these narco-communists and terrorists in the Iberosphere. So, and the last one, of course, about Spain and Portugal, Chega. Chega is one of the last example in the surge of success of right-wing sort of populists or far-right parties in Europe. And here is kind of testified by this tweet by Santiago Abascal. So, summing up, basically, the idea is to explore the relationship between spaces and different type of identities. So how the far right creates different spaces, and that was kind of exemplified by local, regional, national spaces within Spain. But this idea of Iberosphere, a totally new space as fostered by VOX, and how spaces are connected to specific type of identity, to people. And that is something that we, well, I am kind of thinking of. And the two questions also for kind of the discussion, and I'm kind of exploring or wondering if that is bypassing or a reaffirmation of the nation state imagination. In my opinion, that to some extent reaffirms the national state imagination, even though there are new spaces in the discourse, like the Iberosphere, but that nevertheless reaffirms national states as the key spaces of political imagination. And the idea of sovereignty and how this idea, key idea in political discourse, of course, I think in any type of political discourse, not just on the rights, but the idea of sovereignty is declined in different forms. And in that case, in the case of VOX, is declined as a nativist, anti-leftist, anti-globalist vision, as of course as the legitimate authority over a polity or a community. But that is a specific form of sovereignty in the discourse of VOX. And this is it. Thank you for your attention.